All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. We're talking about the Carolina Panthers in tonight's video. I am so glad that they just won 36-22 against the Las Vegas Raiders this past Sunday, folks. 1 week ago, there was no question in almost like 99.9% of NFL fans who the worst team in the NFL was. And it had more so to do, in my opinion, with others' view of Bryce Young as opposed to, maybe a team like the New England Patriots that a lot of people also think is not a good football team. And, they have Jacoby Brissett, a seasoned veteran starter in the NFL, and Bryce Young had a, bad, poor rookie season. So I'm so glad that that's been put to rest because there's no way, shape, or form the Carolina Panthers are the worst team in the NFL. Now, I'm not saying they're Super Bowl candidates. I'm not saying they are even going to win 10 games this upcoming season, but honestly, basing off from this past Sunday with the Red Raider, Andy Dalton, anything really is possible. This team is extremely underrated, and they made a lot of good moves. They drafted Xavier, they drafted JT, they drafted Brooks. They have a really underrated defense that, honestly, right now is decimated by injuries. Most people, I would say, like as a Packers fan, most people I don't think even know who Derek Brown, one of the best edge rushers, defensive ends in the National Football League, even is. And Carolina did three big things this offseason, in my opinion. Actually, we'll make it four. But before we get into it, if you guys enjoy, hit that like button, hit that sub button for daily NFL content. I'll post as many Panthers videos as you guys humanly want. If we could try and get this one to 100 likes, that would mean the absolute world to me. Maybe in our next video, if we could get this one to 100, we'll talk about this defense a little bit more specifically. Carolina made a couple of moves this summer that to me signaled that this is, they're on an upward trajectory, all right? Number one was obviously hiring Dave Canales. Dave Canales with Baker Mayfield last season, resurgence here. It was probably Baker's best season in his entire NFL career, and he was the offensive coordinator with Tampa Bay, and, he's just a new, young, mature, just very smart offensive guys, extremely young. And I just felt like it's, the youthfulness and the creativity is something that Carolina need with their new head coaching position. So they hit a home run there. Next up, you trade for Deontay Johnson, who's a wide receiver one on the Pittsburgh Steelers, pretty much became George Pickens last year. But Deontay Johnson, dealing with injuries last year, just had a down year. The Pittsburgh Steelers were the fifth worst passing offense in the National Football League. And it just, with Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, like it was never consistent at any point outside maybe the final 3 weeks of the season. So you trade for a solidified wide receiver one, and unlike we just mentioned at the beginning of this video, you draft Xavier, right? You draft guys at JT Sanders at tight end. I know it's been a underwhelming rookie season for those first 3 games, but we're taking it with a grain of salt. You draft Jonathan Brooks, extremely versatile, dynamic running back coming out of Texas. That I just, by the way, when he enters this roster, when he gets healthy, oh my God, dude, it's not even funny. Unfortunately, Damian Lewis did just get banged up. I think he is considered day-to-day right now, which is good. They made 2 other big moves, and it was the interior offensive line. They signed Robert Hunt out of Miami, and they signed Damian Lewis out of Seattle. And in my opinion, there's this weird misconception heading into this season that the reason Bryce Young has been struggling is because of the offensive line. Now, obviously, the offensive line last season certainly was not helping out Bryce Young, but it was more so the guard position within the offensive line that was really the issue. So you go out there and you get 2 veteran studs, Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt. And if you tell me, I don't pride myself as being this NFL fan nerd, but I don't view myself as necessarily a casual. If you tell me the Carolina Panthers offensive line is bad, I just know you probably are not familiar with that group, right? And a lot of the offensive line, by the way, comes down to coaching. But I saw this really cool statistic. This is a tweet from the 33rd team, and they were doing the rankings for the lowest pressure rates allowed by offensive lines through week 3. Carolina's clocking in at number 2 at 24.3%. So just my point is, there's a very underrated, under-recognized offensive line that got a very bad rap because of last season. But in my opinion, they made the moves that they needed to. And my issue with Bryce Young is I don't think he's a bust by any means. I don't think, if Andy Dalton plays the way he did this last game, Bryce Young probably doesn't get another start the entire year. And even if that happens, that's honestly a really good scenario because, once again, this Panthers team is actually very competent and they're very capable of putting up points on the board. But, Bryce just looks way too rushed, whether it's his progressions, whether it's just, kind of rambling or I should say scrambling out of an open pocket. He just looks kind of scared. He looks like he's playing defensiveless. He's not being aggressive. And Andy Dalton made a multitude of different throws. Like, we'll look at that Adam Thielen, which, by the way, Adam Thielen's injury really sucks, but we'll talk about that towards the end of the video. He throws a dot at the end of halftime in double coverage for Adam Thielen. So, Andy Dalton was taking risks that Bryce Young just was not doing. He was scrambling once again out of open pockets way too much in his rookie season and in the first 2 games of this year. But what this offensive line and Dave Canales being your head coach has done, it's opened up the running room. And it's something we did not see in the first 2 weeks. I think Chuba, sorry. I always do that. I think Chuba had, like, in week 2, 10 carries for 64 yards or something along that stat line. But, when you're losing, when you're giving up 42 to New Orleans, or you're giving up almost 30 to the Chargers, there's going to be no run game because you're down 3 possessions from, the end of the first half, the end of the first quarter, you're down 14-0. So this running game with Chuba, he's a stud. And I was very surprised, actually, with a lot of Panthers fans not really being on board with him heading into this season. Once again, I cannot wait for Jonathan Brooks to come back healthy because this kid is going to be a freaking dynamic superstar stud, in my opinion. But Chuba, 21 carries, 114 yards, 5.4 yards per carry. And it just opens up the pass game for guys like Andy Dalton or whoever your quarterback is. Andy, 26 of 37, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. It's a really big deal. And unfortunately, Adam Thielen is banged up, but you still have Deontay Johnson. You still got Xavier. You still got Jonathan Mingo. You got David Moore. Jalen Coker is a guy who Steve Smith, for example, absolutely loved coming out of the NFL draft. I'm hoping, because we've already heard from Carolina saying they're not going to be, making any trades or making any free agent acquisitions because Adam Thielen's, going to be missing the next 4 games at least, at minimum. I'm really excited for young guys like Jalen to, get more opportunities, or I should say to get an opportunity in the NFL with Andy Dalton. But, honestly, basing it off 1 game, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but this is the first time that they've had a 4th quarter lead since January 1st, 2023. That was 20 games ago. Carolina had a 100-yard rusher. They had a 100-yard receiver. They had a 300-yard passer in the same game for the first time since October 30th of 2022. This is something to build off, and you've had a interesting matchup at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, where Andy Dalton began his career with. And since he's 0-3, and so it's not going to be an easy football game, but that defense has a ton of holes. This is not the same Cincinnati Bengals defense that we've seen, in that Joe Burrow Super Bowl run a couple of seasons ago. So I would not be surprised if Carolina starts the season 2-2. All right, but that's it for today. Hit that like button, hit that sub button. If you guys want more Panthers videos, let me know down below. If we can try and get this video to 100 likes, folks, that really would mean the world to me. But let me know. Give me a game prediction for Sunday down below. Let's hear it. Thank you for watching. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you in a couple of days. Peace.